"I speak 4 languages," declared the homeless man standing outside a luxury steakhouse in downtown Chicago. German billionaire Klaus Weber burst into laughter when he heard those words coming from a beggar's mouth. The vagrant wore tattered clothes that hadn't seen a washing machine in months, his weathered face telling stories of countless nights spent on unforgiving sidewalks. Klaus couldn't believe this street beggar had the audacity to interrupt his phone conversation with such an absurd claim. 4 languages, you say? Klaus mocked, his thick German accent cutting through the evening air like a blade. The 62-year-old founder of Weber Technologies had built his $12 billion empire by recognizing talent and crushing those who wasted his time. Standing 6 feet tall in his $3,000 Italian suit, Klaus represented everything the homeless man was not: power, success, and untouchable wealth. His piercing blue eyes showed nothing but contempt for the pathetic figure before him. The homeless man, who appeared to be around 55 years old, stood his ground despite the public humiliation. His name was Thomas Mitchell, though Klaus had no interest in learning it. Thomas had been living on Chicago's streets for the past 3 years, surviving on scraps and the occasional charity of strangers. Most people walked past him as if he were invisible, but something about Klaus's arrogant laughter had struck a nerve deep within his weathered soul. "Please, sir, I'm not asking for much," Thomas said, his voice steady despite his circumstances. "I heard you speaking German on the phone about your Frankfurt office expansion, and I noticed some terminology issues that could cost your company millions." Klaus's assistant, Jennifer Martinez, shifted uncomfortably beside her boss, sensing the growing tension in the air. She had worked for Klaus for 8 years and knew his explosive temper could destroy careers in seconds. Klaus felt his face flush with anger at the vagrant's boldness. Here was a man who clearly couldn't afford basic necessities, yet he dared to critique a billionaire's business communications. The restaurant's valet parking attendant pretended not to notice the confrontation, while other wealthy patrons whispered among themselves about the disturbing scene unfolding before their eyes. "You pathetic fool," Klaus spat, his voice dripping with venom that could poison the evening air. "You think some street rat can understand international business better than someone who built a tech empire from nothing?" Thomas remained calm, but his weathered hands trembled slightly as memories of his former life flickered through his mind like ghosts. Klaus pulled out his platinum credit card and waved it mockingly in Thomas's face, the metal catching the restaurant's neon lights. The billionaire's cruelty knew no bounds when he encountered people he considered beneath his social status. Jennifer Martinez watched her boss with growing discomfort, remembering how Klaus had destroyed other people's lives with his ruthless behavior. She had seen him fire entire departments for minor mistakes and publicly humiliate executives who dared to disagree with his decisions. The 43-year-old assistant had learned to stay silent during these moments, knowing that speaking up could cost her the 6-figure salary that supported her 2 children. Her moral compass screamed at her to intervene, but financial necessity kept her frozen in place. "I don't need your money, sir," Thomas replied with dignity that surprised everyone within earshot. "I need you to listen to what I heard during your conference call about the merger with Schneider Industries." Klaus's confident smirk faltered for just a moment as he processed the specific details Thomas had mentioned. How could this homeless man know about confidential business dealings that only his inner circle should have access to? The merger with Schneider Industries was worth $8 billion and hadn't been announced to the public. The restaurant's security guard, Marcus Johnson, approached the scene cautiously, unsure whether to remove the homeless man or wait for Klaus's instructions. Marcus had worked in downtown Chicago for 15 years and had seen countless confrontations between the city's wealthy elite and its forgotten population. Something about Thomas's calm demeanor and Klaus's growing agitation told him this situation was different from typical panhandling incidents. The guard's instincts warned him that bigger forces were at play in this seemingly simple street encounter. Klaus felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm September evening, as if the universe had suddenly shifted beneath his expensive Italian shoes. Thomas's knowledge of confidential business information defied every assumption the billionaire had made about homeless people and their intelligence. The tech mogul's world operated on the principle that success equaled worth, and failure meant you deserved whatever misfortune befell you. But something in Thomas's eyes suggested a story far more complex than Klaus's prejudices could comprehend. Thomas reached into his torn jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook that had somehow survived 3 years of street living. The pages were stained and worn, but the handwriting inside remained clear and precise. filled with notes about international business terminology and linguistic nuances. Klaus stared at the notebook with growing confusion, unable to understand how a homeless man could possess such detailed knowledge about corporate communications. Jennifer leaned closer, her curiosity overriding her fear of Klaus's potential wrath if she showed interest in the vagrant's claims. "During your call with Heinrich Muller from Schneider Industries," Thomas began, his voice gaining strength with each word, "you used the term Geschäftsabschluss when discussing the final contract terms." Klaus's face turned pale as he realized Thomas had not only overheard his private conversation, but understood the subtle differences in German business language. The homeless man continued speaking with an expertise that made Klaus's stomach churn with unexpected anxiety and growing respect for this mysterious stranger. "The problem is that Geschäftsabschluss implies a simple transaction, but what you needed was Unternehmensverbindung to convey the strategic partnership aspect," Thomas explained, his pronunciation of German words flawless despite his American accent. Klaus felt the ground shifting beneath him as he recognized the accuracy of Thomas's linguistic correction. The billionaire had indeed used improper terminology during the crucial negotiation, potentially sending the wrong message to his German counterparts about the nature of their business relationship. Jennifer watched in amazement as her boss's arrogant confidence crumbled like a house of cards in a hurricane. She had never seen Klaus Weber speechless, and the sight both thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. The security guard Marcus stepped back, sensing that this confrontation had evolved beyond a simple removal situation into something that could change everyone's understanding of human worth and hidden potential. Other restaurant patrons had stopped their conversations to observe the unusual drama unfolding on the sidewalk. Klaus's mind raced as he tried to process the implications of Thomas's knowledge and the potential damage his linguistic mistakes might have caused. The Schneider Industries merger represented the crowning achievement of his career, and the thought that a homeless man had identified critical errors in his communication sent shockwaves through his carefully constructed sense of superiority. For the first time in decades, Klaus Weber felt genuinely uncertain about his assumptions regarding intelligence, success, and the true value of human beings. "Where did you learn German?" Klaus demanded, his voice betraying a mixture of curiosity and growing panic about what other mistakes Thomas might have discovered. The homeless man smiled sadly, revealing teeth that had seen better days but eyes that sparkled with intelligence that poverty couldn't diminish. Thomas had been waiting 3 years for someone to ask him about his past, and Klaus's question opened floodgates of memories that had been carefully stored away like treasures in his weathered mind. "University of Michigan, class of 1991, Thomas replied, watching Klaus's expression transform from mockery to shock. "Double major in international business and Germanic studies, summa cum laude." Jennifer gasped audibly, her hand flying to cover her mouth as she processed the revelation that this homeless man possessed educational credentials that rivaled those of Klaus's highest-paid executives. The assistant's mind reeled as she imagined what circumstances could have reduced such an accomplished person to life on the streets. Klaus felt his worldview cracking like ice on a frozen lake as Thomas continued his story with quiet dignity. "I also speak French fluently from my 2 years studying at the Sorbonne, Spanish from my work with international clients, and Italian because my ex-wife Elena was from Milan." Each language Thomas mentioned hit Klaus like a physical blow, destroying every prejudice the billionaire had held about homeless people and their supposed lack of intelligence or education. The restaurant's maître d', Antoine Dubois, approached the group with concern etched across his face, worried that the commotion might disturb his wealthy clientele. However, as he overheard Thomas speaking perfect French while explaining his background, Antoine's expression shifted from annoyance to amazement. The French restaurant manager realized he was witnessing something extraordinary, a homeless man who spoke his native language with the sophistication of a diplomat's. "Monsieur," Antoine addressed Thomas in French, "your accent is impeccable. Where did you study?" Thomas responded fluently, explaining his time at the Sorbonne and his years working as an international business consultant before his life took its devastating turn. Klaus watched this exchange with growing horror, realizing that his assumptions about human worth based on external appearances had been completely and utterly wrong about this remarkable man standing before him. Thomas's story unfolded like a tragic novel, as he explained how his successful consulting firm had collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis. "I lost everything," Thomas said, his voice steady, despite the pain of reliving those devastating memories. My company, my house, my marriage, and eventually my will to rebuild. Klaus listened with growing discomfort, as he realized that Thomas's homelessness resulted from economic forces beyond individual control, rather than personal failure or lack of intelligence. For 3 years, I've been surviving on these streets, listening to business conversations because languages are all I have left, Thomas continued, his dignity intact despite his circumstances. Jennifer felt tears forming in her eyes as she imagined how many talented people might be dismissed or ignored simply because of their current situation. The assistant realized she had probably walked past dozens of accomplished individuals without recognizing their hidden potential or tragic stories. Klaus's phone buzzed with a text message from Heinrich Müller, and his blood ran cold as he read the contents. Klaus, we need to discuss terminology concerns from yesterday's call before finalizing merger terms, the message stated. The billionaire's hands trembled as he realized Thomas's linguistic corrections weren't theoretical. They were immediately relevant to his most important business deal. The homeless man had potentially saved Klaus's company millions of dollars with his unsolicited advice. You just prevented a major misunderstanding with Schneider Industries, Klaus whispered, staring at his phone in disbelief. Thomas nodded calmly, having anticipated that his warnings would prove accurate within hours rather than days. The homeless man's understanding of international business extended far beyond language skills. He possessed strategic insight that Klaus's highest-paid consultants had somehow missed, despite their expensive educations and luxurious offices. The magnitude of Klaus's prejudice and potential loss hit him like a freight train traveling at full speed through his consciousness. Here stood a man he had dismissed as worthless, someone who had just saved his $12 billion empire from a costly communication failure. Klaus felt shame burning in his chest like acid, as he realized how many other talented individuals he might have overlooked or mistreated based on their external circumstances rather than their actual capabilities. Thomas, Klaus said, using the homeless man's name for the first time since their confrontation began, I need to ask you something important, and I want you to answer honestly. The billionaire's tone had completely transformed from mockery to genuine respect, a change so dramatic that Jennifer wondered if she was witnessing her boss's first moment of true humility. Thomas nodded, prepared for whatever question Klaus might pose, having nothing left to lose and everything to gain from complete honesty. If you could review all my international communications from the past 6 months, what other mistakes might you find? Klaus asked, his pride swallowing hard as he admitted potential errors to someone he had ridiculed moments earlier. Thomas smiled sadly, reaching into another pocket to pull out additional notebooks filled with observations he had made while listening to various business conversations throughout downtown Chicago. The homeless man had been conducting an informal audit of corporate communications without anyone realizing his expertise. I've been taking notes on overheard conversations for months, Thomas admitted, opening his notebook to reveal detailed analyses of linguistic errors made by various business leaders. Your industry uses a lot of technical jargon that doesn't translate properly into other languages, and most executives don't realize they're creating confusion during international negotiations. Klaus read through the notes with growing amazement, recognizing several of his own companies mentioned alongside potential solutions to communication problems. Jennifer leaned over to glimpse the notebook's contents and gasped at the sophisticated level of analysis Thomas had produced using nothing but discarded pens and paper scraps found on the street. His observations included not only linguistic corrections, but strategic insights about cultural communication patterns that could revolutionize how American companies conducted international business. The homeless man had essentially created a consulting report worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, using only his intelligence and determination. Klaus felt his entire understanding of human potential shifting like tectonic plates beneath an earthquake of realization. This brilliant man had been invisible to society, dismissed by everyone including himself, while possessing knowledge that could transform multiple industries. The billionaire's success suddenly felt hollow when compared to Thomas's resilience and intellectual achievements under impossible circumstances. Klaus realized he had been measuring human worth by all the wrong standards throughout his entire life. Block 07. Thomas, I have a proposition for you, Klaus said, his voice carrying a sincerity that surprised everyone listening to their conversation. The billionaire pulled out his business card and handed it to the homeless man. a gesture that would have been unthinkable just 30 minutes earlier. Jennifer watched this transformation with amazement, wondering if her boss had experienced some kind of spiritual awakening, or if Thomas's expertise had simply overcome Klaus's prejudices through sheer intellectual force. "I want to hire you as Director of International Communications for Weber Technologies," Klaus continued, ignoring the shocked gasps from nearby restaurant patrons who had been following their conversation. Thomas stared at the business card in disbelief, his hands shaking as he processed the life-changing offer being extended to him after 3 years of surviving on Chicago's unforgiving streets. The position Klaus offered typically required decades of corporate experience and commanded salaries exceeding $200,000 annually. "Sir, I haven't had a shower in 4 days, I'm wearing clothes from a donation bin, and I don't have a permanent address," Thomas replied, his practical concerns overwhelming his emotional response to Klaus's unexpected generosity. The homeless man's humility and self-awareness impressed Klaus even more than his linguistic abilities, proving that adversity had not diminished Thomas's character or professional integrity. Jennifer realized she was witnessing a moment that would change both men's lives forever. Klaus pulled out his phone and speed-dialed his personal assistant, Patricia Williams, who handled his most confidential arrangements. "Patricia, I need you to book the presidential suite at the Palmer House Hotel for the next month and arrange for a complete wardrobe fitting from Giorgio Armani," Klaus instructed, his eyes never leaving Thomas's face. The homeless man's jaw dropped as he heard Klaus making arrangements that would cost more money than most people earned in an entire year. "Klaus, are you certain about this decision?" Jennifer whispered, concerned about the speed at which her boss was making life-altering commitments to someone he had met just moments ago. The billionaire nodded confidently, having made successful business decisions throughout his career by trusting his instincts when recognizing exceptional talent. Klaus's ability to identify and acquire valuable assets had built his empire, and every instinct told him that Thomas Mitchell represented the most valuable acquisition of his entire career. The Palmer House Hotel's presidential suite had hosted presidents, celebrities, and royalty, but never a homeless man transitioning back into corporate society. Thomas stood in the marble bathroom, staring at his reflection in the gold-framed mirror, barely recognizing the clean-shaven professional who looked back at him. The custom-tailored Armani suit fit perfectly, transforming his appearance so dramatically that even he questioned whether this transformation was real or just an elaborate dream from which he might wake up on the cold sidewalk. Klaus had arranged for Thomas to spend the first week reviewing Weber Technologies' international correspondence, and the results were beyond impressive. Working from the hotel's business center, Thomas identified communication errors that had cost the company an estimated $50 million in lost contracts over the past year alone. His detailed analysis included specific solutions and cultural sensitivity training recommendations that could prevent similar mistakes in the future, proving his value exceeded Klaus's initial investment by thousands of percentage points. "Klaus, the Frankfurt office has been using Auftrag instead of Vertrag in their legal documents, which could invalidate several contracts," Thomas explained during their first official meeting in Weber Technologies' boardroom. The conference room, located on the 42nd floor of Chicago's Willis Tower, offered breathtaking views of the city where Thomas had spent 3 years living on the streets. 23 executives listened in stunned silence as the former homeless man presented insights that their expensive consulting firms had somehow missed. Jennifer Martinez had been promoted to Thomas's assistant, helping him navigate corporate protocols he hadn't used in over a decade. She marveled at his ability to adapt to high-level business environments while maintaining the humility and wisdom gained from his years of adversity. Thomas treated every employee with respect, remembering what it felt like to be invisible and ensuring that no one in his presence ever experienced that dehumanizing feeling. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal for both Klaus and Thomas. The billionaire had discovered that true wealth came from recognizing and nurturing human potential, while Thomas had learned that his darkest period had prepared him for his greatest opportunity. Their unlikely partnership was reshaping Weber Technologies' culture, proving that intelligence and worth existed in the most unexpected places throughout society. 6 months after their sidewalk encounter, Weber Technologies had become the most successful international communications company in the tech industry. Thomas's cultural sensitivity protocols had generated over $300 million in new contracts, while his language training programs had been licensed to Fortune 500 companies worldwide. Klaus watched with pride as Thomas presented quarterly results to the board of directors. knowing that his decision to look beyond appearances had created value that extended far beyond monetary measurements. Our Frankfurt expansion is now projected to exceed initial estimates by 400%, Thomas announced to the assembled executives, his confidence fully restored after years of doubt and desperation. The boardroom erupted in applause, but Thomas remained humble, knowing that success was fragile and circumstances could change without warning. His experience with homelessness had taught him to appreciate every opportunity while preparing for potential setbacks that life might bring. Klaus had established the Mitchell Foundation, named after Thomas, to identify and support talented individuals experiencing homelessness throughout Chicago and beyond. The foundation's first year had helped over 200 people transition from the streets to meaningful employment, proving that Thomas's story wasn't unique. Countless intelligent, capable individuals were being overlooked by society due to temporary circumstances. Jennifer Martinez had been promoted to foundation director, using her organizational skills to expand their outreach programs. The German billionaire often reflected on how close he had come to walking past the most valuable employee of his career. Thomas's linguistic expertise had prevented multiple international disasters, his cultural insights had opened new markets, and his leadership had transformed Weber Technologies into a model of corporate social responsibility. Klaus realized that his initial prejudices had nearly cost him the opportunity to participate in one of the most successful business partnerships in modern history. During their weekly lunch meetings at the same restaurant where they first met, Klaus and Thomas discussed the philosophical implications of their unlikely partnership. Both men had learned profound lessons about human worth, potential, and the dangers of judging individuals based on temporary circumstances rather than inherent capabilities. Their friendship had transcended business success to become a testament to the transformative power of seeing beyond external appearances, to recognize the extraordinary potential that exists within every human being. The Harvard Business Review featured Thomas on their cover story titled, "From Streets to Success, Redefining Corporate Talent Acquisition, Bringing International Attention to His Remarkable Journey." Speaking engagements at universities and conferences worldwide had made Thomas one of the most sought-after experts on international business communications and corporate social responsibility. His story inspired countless individuals facing their own struggles while challenging businesses to reconsider their hiring practices and assumptions about human potential. Klaus had been invited to speak at the World Economic Forum about innovative approaches to identifying untapped talent in unexpected places. Standing before an audience of global leaders, the German billionaire shared how his encounter with Thomas had revolutionized not only his company, but his entire understanding of success and human worth. The presentation received a standing ovation and sparked conversations about systematic changes needed in how society treats its most vulnerable members. Every major city has hundreds of Thomas Mitchells living on their streets, Klaus told the distinguished audience of world leaders and business executives. The question isn't whether talent exists among the homeless population, it's whether we're wise enough to recognize and nurture that talent when we encounter it. His words resonated with leaders who began implementing similar programs in their own organizations, creating a ripple effect of social change across multiple industries. The partnership between Klaus and Thomas had evolved into something far more significant than a business relationship. They had become advocates for systemic changes in how society identified and supported human potential, regardless of current circumstances or external appearances. Weber Technologies' success story was being studied in business schools as an example of how social responsibility and corporate profits could work together to create sustainable value for all stakeholders. Thomas maintained his weekly visits to Chicago's homeless shelters, not as charity work, but as talent scouting opportunities for the Mitchell Foundation. His ability to identify individuals with hidden skills and untapped potential had created a pipeline of exceptional employees for companies willing to look beyond traditional hiring criteria. The foundation's success rate exceeded 90%, proving that intelligence and capability existed throughout all levels of society, waiting for recognition and opportunity. 3 years after their initial meeting, Klaus and Thomas stood together at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Mitchell Learning Center, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to providing education and job training for individuals experiencing homelessness. The center, funded entirely by Weber Technologies' profits, represented the culmination of their shared vision to create systematic change in how society supports its most vulnerable members. Local politicians, business leaders, and media representatives attended the ceremony, recognizing the transformative impact of their innovative partnership. This center represents more than just another charity. Thomas addressed the assembled crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had experienced both the depths of despair and the heights of success. It represents our collective recognition that human potential exists everywhere, waiting for someone brave enough to look beyond appearances and circumstances to see the extraordinary capabilities that adversity often develops. His words echoed across the plaza, inspiring everyone present to reconsider their own assumptions about human worth and potential. Klaus watched with deep satisfaction as Thomas spoke, remembering the arrogant billionaire he had been before their life-changing encounter. The German entrepreneur had learned that true success wasn't measured by the wealth you accumulated, but by the positive impact you created in other people's lives. Weber Technologies had become more profitable than ever, but more importantly, it had become a force for social good that extended far beyond corporate earnings reports. The Mitchell Learning Center's first graduating class included former homeless individuals who had secured positions at major corporations throughout Chicago and beyond. Their success stories were documented and shared internationally, creating a movement that challenged traditional notions about employment, education, and human potential. Thomas's initial linguistic correction had evolved into a global conversation about recognizing and nurturing talent wherever it existed in society. As the ceremony concluded, Klaus and Thomas walked through the center's halls observing students engaged in language classes, computer training, and professional development workshops. Both men understood that their partnership had created something far more valuable than business success. They had proven that when society invests in human potential, rather than judging by external circumstances, everyone benefits from the resulting innovations, perspectives, and contributions that previously marginalized individuals can provide. Today, Thomas Mitchell serves as Chief Executive Officer of the Mitchell Foundation, which has helped over 5,000 individuals transition from homelessness to meaningful employment across 23 states. His story has been adapted into a best-selling book and upcoming Hollywood film, inspiring millions of people worldwide to reconsider their assumptions about human worth and potential. Klaus Weber was named Humanitarian Entrepreneur of the Year by the United Nations, recognizing his commitment to creating business models that generate both profit and positive social impact. The two men remain close friends and business partners, continuing to challenge conventional wisdom about talent identification and human potential. Their weekly lunch meetings at that same Chicago restaurant have become legendary among business leaders, representing the moment when prejudice transformed into partnership and changed two lives forever. Weber Technologies continues to lead the industry in international communications, while serving as a model for how businesses can create value by investing in overlooked human capital. Thomas Mitchell's journey from the streets to the boardroom proves that extraordinary talent exists in the most unexpected places, waiting for someone brave enough to look beyond external appearances. His 4 languages weren't just linguistic skills, they were symbols of resilience, intelligence, and untapped potential that society had written off as worthless. Klaus Weber's transformation from prejudiced billionaire to humanitarian entrepreneur shows that even the most successful people can learn, grow, and discover new definitions of true wealth. This story challenges every assumption we make about human worth based on external circumstances. How many brilliant minds are we walking past every day without recognition? How many solutions to our biggest problems are being ignored because we judge the messenger rather than listening to the message? Thomas and Klaus proved that when we invest in human potential rather than prejudice, everyone wins. The next time you encounter someone who seems different from you, remember Thomas Mitchell's story. Behind every face is a unique collection of experiences, knowledge, and capabilities that could change your life if you're wise enough to listen. Real success isn't about the money you make. It's about the potential you help others realize. If this story inspired you to see people differently and recognize the extraordinary potential that exists in unexpected places, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment telling us about a time when someone surprised you with their hidden talents, or when you discovered that your first impressions were completely wrong. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge your assumptions and remind you that human potential has no boundaries. It only needs recognition and opportunity to flourish.